And we are live on the Icecast Live. My name is Shane Chebsey, and next to me is Mr. Olly McMonee. How you doing, Olly?
Very good, thank you. Great to be back for a second season.
Yeah, it's your first show on season 2, isn't it?
It is, yes. So now we're back on Thursdays because Fridays are my drinking nights.
Right.
It was my birthday last weekend, I had a big weekend of drinking.
So you're just about recovered now, mate?
Oh, I'll be doing it all again tomorrow.
Well, it's good to have you back on the show, mate.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
I have missed you. We've already been warned by our guest tonight that you will need to try and speak as much as the Queen's English as possible. How do you think you'll get on with that tonight, Olly?
I will enunciate with my best teaching voice on, and we'll see how we go.
And of course, our guest tonight is the legendary Mr. Ron Frenz. Now, most people will be aware of Ron's work because he did some amazing runs with Marvel on Spider-Man and Thor, and of course, Superman over at DC. But now he's working with Tom DeFalco and Sal Buscema, and they are producing a brand new book called The Right Project, which is very intriguing, and it seems to be good old-fashioned superheroics in, you would say, the mighty Marvel manner, but it's not at Marvel. But it looks great, doesn't it, Olly?
But I'll tell you, with those three talents, they've certainly got the right stuff for this project.
Oh, very good, very good, very good.
See what I did?
I did.
I'm here all week.
Oh, it's good to have you back, mate. It is. Sam, run that VT and let's get the guest on.
As he dropped out, as poor old Sam dropped out.
Welcome back to the Icecast Live, and welcome, Mr. Ron Frenz. How you doing, Ron?
Hi, gentlemen. Pleasure to be with you.
Good evening from sunny UK, Ron.
Well, it's not here. We're very cloudy over here in Pennsylvania in the U.S. So,
really?
I think the weather's starting to go a fall on us here. So.
Yeah, it's later than we get it. It's not, I remember going over about this time of year once to, well, I was near I was sort of New Jersey side, and it was October, and there was a heat wave on. It was a few years ago. Yeah, it was weird. And then halfway through the week, it absolutely turned into a monsoon. It just turned on a.
That's actually, they're calling for some severe storms this evening, but.
Oh, really?
October's always been weird. I can remember some Halloweens where there was a thin layer of snow on the ground, and I can remember some Halloweens where it was too hot to wear a costume.
Yeah.
So it's been all over the board here in Pennsylvania.
Wow. Well, it wouldn't be a British podcast if it didn't have talk about the weather. Thanks for accommodating us, Ron.
My pleasure. And I'll go boil some food if you want me to. What other stereotype can I kill?
We can get through them all tonight, trust me.
Yeah, we'll get through them. Ollie will have a cup of tea in a minute.
I've just had my cup of tea. Right. Thank you very much.
So tonight, primarily, we're here to talk about The Right Project, which is your new project with Sal and Tom, and to find out a little bit more about it. a little bit more
Okay.
about it. I mean, I've had a look at the art on the Indiegogo. I keep going to say Kickstarter, but it's not a Kickstarter; it's Indiegogo. What was your thinking behind going with that platform as opposed to say Kickstarter?
Well, I'm not. I can honestly say I didn't have much input at all in what platform we went with.
Right.
In fact, Tom DeFalco. Here's the deal. Before we get started, and then again, thank you very much for having me. Because you mentioned Marvel and you mentioned DC, which I really appreciate. But I am still currently working with Sit Comics, working on their book, The Blue Baron, and the Heroes Union. I'm doing layouts for Heroes Union and pencils for the Blue Baron. So that is still very much an ongoing project, and I'm very proud to be a part of. The Right project kind of came in from left field. It's actually a project that Tom and I have had sitting on the back burner for quite a while.
Right.
And we had an opportunity to bring it forward. We were approached by a young publisher, Apex Comics, in conjunction with an outfit called Liquid Avatar and some other people that have done all high-tech stuff, NFTs that I don't understand and all this stuff. And they were asked us if we were interested in publishing something through their imprint. So it was a chance to revive this concept that we were both very fond of. And it didn't really start out as an Indiegogo project, but that was something that was decided on the corporate level at some point. And another gentleman named Mariano Nicieza, who is the publisher for Apex Comics, actually did most of the legwork and all of the spreadsheets and all of that stuff that's involved in putting together the actual Indiegogo campaign. I am a freelancer, man. I am very happy working for people who will pay me and not self-publishing. You know, Tom and I have managed to avoid self-publishing for all these years, and and this kind of almost happened by accident, and not the. Like I said, Mariano Nicieza was very hands-on, and he handled almost the entirety of it in consultation with DeFalco. And I pretty much just sat back and said, is there anything I need to redraw or tweak or anything? And my big part will be when we're doing all the signings and all the things that for all the levels of all the people who have invested in this effort. But the project itself was, you know, I'm really happy with the design of the character. A ways back, DeFalco and I, when we first considered going to an independent publisher, he did a book called Randy O'Donnell is the Man with Image for like 2 or 3 issues. And at that point, we were talking about doing this book. At that time, it was just called Mr. Right. And it was one of these situations where, quite frankly, we started to put our heads together and say, okay, if we're going to put our names on something, if we want to create a character that this is us, what do you want to do? And we knew up front that almost immediately, because it's something Tom and I have talked about over and over and over again, our favorite type of adventure character. And we're talking in the Captain America, Daredevil range. In the, a tumbling super athlete type of a character,
as opposed to a super powered character.
We're not real cosmic guys and all this kind of stuff. So we were definitely looking something in the Simon Kirby range, like a stuntman, or the Simon and Kirby Captain America, or any of those types of characters, Guardian, that kind of thing. So we started putting ideas together, and in my sketchbook was a character called Mr. Right that I had originally intended as background color for the MC2 universe.
All right.
He was kind of going to be the MC2 version of like a Daredevil type of character.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so it was a different design, but the name, I always loved the name. It's such a wonderfully basic name for a hero.
Yeah.
I mean, apparently, given different ages and given the zeitgeist of the time, people, if you just said, right, people might say wrong, they might say left, they might say, whatever. But, and, at the time we came up with it, the biggest issue was that people might think it's a romance title,
Oh, right, Mr. Right, yeah.
It's taken on a slightly different connotation now that we're completely avoiding, because if you see a square-jawed superhero character with a smile on his face and a big red costume, and his name is Mr. Right, and if you don't think right and wrong, if you think anything but that, then you need to stop watching too much cable television. But, so that's really what we're going with. And of course, by the time we came around to publishing it again, we actually had to call it something besides Mr. Right, because I obsessively did just a Google search, and there is somebody out there who was doing one of these print to order black and white comic that was called Mr. Right. And Tom and I had to, within like a day or two, we had to come up with a new title for it.
Wow.
So, because the ins and outs of copyright and trademark are fairly draconian.
There's one headache you don't want, isn't it? Is to have somebody.
Right. Because for one thing, the other person that's using it, as near as we could tell, didn't trademark it. But if we had trademarked it, then the thing about a trademark is you have to defend it.
Yes.
So if we would have trademarked it, we would have had to have been the bad guy and steamrolled this other person and said, "Well, you should have trademarked it, guy." And there was, and they've produced quite a bit of material. Right. And you don't want to be the bad guy if you're going to do a comic called Mr. Right. So
that's true.
And actually, quite frankly, by calling it the Right Project, I mean the periods were already in the origin story. The Right already stood for something. Yeah. So the periods worked just fine. And at one point, I was going, well, can't we just call it Mr. Right with the periods? He says, no, because it's too similar. We'd still have to defend it, blah, blah, blah. So by coming up with the Right Project, what I really like about that title is it broadens the scope of the stories, because it involves the entire cast now.
Yeah, it's not just the one character.
Way. Yeah, exactly. It's not just about the Mr. Right character. It's about the peripheral characters too. It's about the Right Project. It's about the technology itself, and it's about a wider spectrum of stories, because we don't, not that we were intending to ignore the supporting cast, but now they're very much front and center with the superhero character as well. So I mean, it's been a lot of fun. I mean, back when we were originally developing it, it got caught up in all kinds of bizarre stuff, because how these days a lot of people come up with a concept for a comic or a graphic novel or whatever they want to call it to sound to some class.
It's all comics. It's all comics to me.
Exactly. It's. I mean, I am very proudly a cartoonist. I've never pretended to be anything else. But a lot of people do it to hoping to get some kind of an option from a TV production company or a film production company or something like that. A lot of people are trying to use comics as a backdoor to something larger. And at the time we were developing Mr. Right initially, Tom DeFalco did make contact and hire a promoter out on the West Coast just to see what interest there might be in everything. And at one point, Warner TV was looking at the property, and even in so much as asking for a Bible, which was written by other writers besides DeFalco. So that kind of became a confusing issue. We were told at one point that even the Rock's people were looking at it early on in his acting career and everything, which he would have been perfect for it, to tell you the truth. But so a lot of those other things started to make us wonder. Maybe if that's a possibility, maybe we should wait until we see if something else is locked down before we begin to publish, because we might need to lean in one direction or the other to make sure we don't have a confusion in the marketplace and everything. So there were a lot of conversations, a lot of business type conversations that I'm incredibly uncomfortable with, because
it's not the fun part, is it?
I just want to sing about superheroes, man. just let me come up with goofy ideas and let me draw them, and I'll be, give me a couple of cans of SpaghettiOs and I'm happy. It's got to be with the meatballs. Got to be with the meatballs. But anyway,
okay.
So that was, kind of like the origin of it and everything. I mean, what it's evolved into is something that, again, we're still. This is Comics 101 for DeFalco and Friends. If you're a fan of our work, I would, I can't help but believe that you're going to enjoy this. I mean, it's Tom DeFalco's hoo-ha action. It's
you know what you're getting, don't you? With you guys, that's the thing.
So. I mean, it's all ages entertainment. It's fun. It's action. It's it's superheroes. And if you like superheroes, then I think you'll enjoy the right project.
I mean, I always liked Tom's writing with his, you're talking about there's an ensemble cast, there's, the supporting cast. I always liked how he did that, when he was doing, especially, with on the Spider-Man stuff, he built up those supporting characters, and they were just as essential to, the book as Spider-Man. It wasn't just Spider-Man and a villain.
We may have talked about this before, Shane, because
I think we did.
He's a technical writer in the best sense. He doesn't just grind an axe. He doesn't just sit down at his typewriter and say he outlines. Everything's going somewhere. He's a craft writer, and that's what I love about it. There's absolutely nothing he is doing in a story and building a tale. There's nothing he does because he thinks it would be cool or he thinks it'll be shocking. He builds it bit by bit as a craft, and nobody does. When we have done, usually what we work to make every individual issue a beginning, a middle, and end for any reader. But when we do longer arcs, like whether it's the mystery of the Hobgoblin, which got blown out of the water, or whether it's the God War, the War of the Pantheons in Thor or whatever, it's all very considered. It's all on a chart. He knows what he's doing, why he's doing it, when he's doing it. It's all timed out, and it's magic to watch it all come together. I mean, even for me, as I'm penciling, when you get to the moments of denouement, when you get to the moments when a certain facts are known and or there's a major character.
Yeah, those payoffs were great every time. Yeah.
And that's
the thing.
One of the things I learned with Tom, which I wish more publishers learned, is nothing is cooler than the end of the story. I mean, Avengers Endgame was a perfect example of there's nothing wrong with ending a story.
Yeah.
And so many comics publishers these days are rolling, the end of one story just rolls into the next one because they're panicked. They don't want to give anybody a chance to jump off. It's like, well, if your ending is compelling enough, your readers aren't going anywhere.
Yeah, definitely.
Come on, man, but give them something. Give them a meal. Let them, let them sit back and loosen their belt. I mean, they've been on this trip with you, so let them enjoy the completion of the meal. And
that's one of the things is difficult to write, isn't it? I guess for a lot of writers, is an ending. I mean, some of the best writers out there struggle with ending stories, don't they?
Endings are a bitch. I mean, you want to tie up all the pertinent storylines that were going on at that time. You want to keep some things in play when you're doing, especially when you're doing monthly comics, when you're doing a monthly serialization of anything, any kind of serial. You'd like to keep some stuff in play, but you want to make sure that you have brought a lot of the storylines that you've been dealing with to some conclusion where you can take a breath and say, oh, that's where that was going. Okay. And you let it sit. Some of the stuff is still percolating off to the side, but you've brought a lot of things to rest. And some of my favorite stories that I've done with DeFalco have been when we finally get to the point where we're making sure that we're putting periods on all the right sentences and ending an epic, because that's just great fun. I mean, it's like the last it's like the last hour and a half of Endgame. I mean, the times we've done it, like for Thor 400 or 432 or Spider-Girl coming in, wrapping up a 6-issue arc or something. Those are the stories that I really remember because of that denouement. That.
And I think that's what the readers remember as well. I mean, you think back to what you remember. It's usually those big endings, isn't it, that you've been waiting for months. Yeah. We've got some comments in, which isn't a surprise. Well, I'll just read through a few of them. From Craig Giles, Ron Frenz, what a legend.
Come on.
I think you get sick of hearing that word, don't you, Ron?
No, it just doesn't apply. I mean, Steve Ditko is a legend. Jack Kirby is a legend. Will Eisner is a legend. Stan Lee is a legend. Tom DeFalco is only a legend because he calls himself a legendary because
we'll let him have it.
Well, he read that Michael Jackson was the person who started calling himself the king of pop. And when he read that, he went, he loves promotion. Tom lives for promotion. Ever since he was in college, he started writing promotional copy. So he loves promotion. So yes, he calls himself the legendary Tom DeFalco.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, and I keep it up on my Facebook page, and we've done podcasts where they're very careful to call him the legendary Tom DeFalco.
It has to be in there. It's
legitimate.
It's a stipulation.
But I mean, that we get way. I appreciate it, but we get way too free. That we get way too free with that.
But did you not, Ron, when you were drawing Spider-Man during that black costume phase,
right,
were you not aware that you were making comic book history at the time?
We were not. We were not in any way aware of that. Quite frankly, Ollie, when we were doing it at the time, I swear to God's honest truth, at one point, Jim Shooter came into Tom DeFalco's office and said, "When are you introducing the black suit?" And he said, "Issue 252. He said, "Get rid of it in 253 because we're getting snail mail. They're killing us. This thing is going to sink like a stone."
Really?
Yeah. I mean, because it's back before the internet, all that.
Of course.
And Tom made the argument using logic and and craft and storytelling. He said,
and his legendary status.
He said, "We can't do that, Jim." And Jim said, "What do you mean we can't?" And he said, "Well, because you're not introducing the black suit until like issue 6 or 7 of Secret Wars.
It's issue 8, actually. Yeah.
You can't get rid of it in Amazing Spider-Man before you even introduce it in Secret Wars. That's not playing fair."
That's a good point.
With the reader. Yeah. And Shooter had to agree. He said, "No, you're absolutely right." So if you look at the original run, the month after it's introduced in Secret Wars is when we get rid of it in Spider-Man. I mean, he still, but by that time, all the snail mail had shifted. Everybody actually had seen the new suit,
right,
and loved it.
Yeah.
So that's why the Black Cat made a cloth version, and we did all the stuff where we're using both suits for a while. Because everybody ended up loving it once they saw it.
Yeah.
So it was silliness. But yeah, we had no reason to believe that we were creating anything that was going to be remembered.
It was, I mean, for me, it was the first Marvel comic. I was always a DC head, and we had this British reprint with all the brilliant Alan Moore
Spider-Man and Zoid
stuff. No, it was the Mighty World of Marvel.
Oh,
and
right.
They had just a little thing about the black costume. Again, this is in the day before the internet. I thought, right, I'll buy. I didn't get the first issue with the costume in, but I got the second one where the Rose's identity is revealed. So I was hooked straight away. But it was the artwork and the story. It wasn't the gimmick of the costume, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. No, I do. And I mean, it was huge at the time, of course, because anything successful is going to be done to death. I mean, he's got dozens of new suits now. I mean, I not that long ago did a Facebook post because I came across some old sketches that about a year after we got the black suit, and I don't even know where that was as far as the development of Venom and all that kind of stuff. But about a year after that, the editor at the time on The Amazing Spider-Man thought that that like every year he should get a new costume.
Oh, really?
And I remember, I didn't take it real seriously, but he wanted to see sketches of some other new suit, So I even did comedy ones because I thought it was ridiculous. But
is that where the Scarlet Spider came from? Then with that ridiculous
no, actually, nothing came of it, fortunately. Because what ended up, the one he ended up liking was the black costume, but with red highlights instead of blue and underarm webbing. That's what he ended up liking, and that's what he had signed off on. But unfortunately, by the time it never happened because he fired us, and then he was fired, and there was a huge
big change.
Whole personnel overturned on all the Spider-Man titles. So it never happened. So I decided, well, I'm going to go. I'll do a Facebook post about it, and my whole tone in the Facebook post was, we dodged the bullet on this one because it was a goofy idea. That's not how anybody read it, because these days Spider-Man has a stealth suit, and he has new suits in every movie, and he's got an armored suit, and he's got this, and I forgot everything that had happened in the meantime, for the past 25, 30 years. So the fans now, they love the idea of Spider-Man going to his closet and going, who am I fighting? And is it going to be day or night? And should I pick?
It used to be just the Wasp with those many costume changes. Now it's everybody. Everyone's a fashionista.
I still stand on the same attitude I had all those years ago when they first showed me a sketch of the black costume. I thought it was a new bad guy, and and I said so, and they said, no, this is Spider-Man's new costume. And it's like, why, of all the characters out there, why would you give Spider-Man a new suit? He's got the best costume ever designed.
Iconic, isn't it?
I mean, Ditko's work on that is just, it's fantastic. That is one of the best costumes ever designed for a superhero. No doubt about it.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I mean, you can tweak it here and there, but why the hell would you come up with something completely different? I to this day, I would take that attitude because it is a fantastic design.
Yeah, I love it. Absolutely love it. We have got a few more little comments. Kevin Kennedy, hi guys, from a fan here. Wish I could stay, but I'm at an appointment. It's always nice when the fans give us details of their personal lives in the comments. I will certainly watch after the video if one pops up. All the best in your new project.
Well, thank you very much, Kevin. I appreciate that. And if it's the dentist, I hope it doesn't hurt too bad.
What's this one? Evening, chaps. Who are you comic pro here? Oh, who are your comic pro heroes and influences? From Paddy.
Well, Paddy, I think it would be pretty easy to tell. I'm from I'm definitely from the Buscema school. I worship Jack Kirby. I love Steve Ditko. But yeah, my DNA is, I think, most deeply affected by the Buscema brothers and John Romita. That's, those are the guys I wanted to be when I grew up, and I'm still working towards that because I wasn't one of these kids that ever dreamed of being the next guy to, redesign how this was done. In my opinion, Eisner figured it out. Kirby figured it out. The best way to effectively use this medium, all the different effective ways that this medium could be used. And what I don't like is when the medium is used to be the redheaded stepchild of film, because although both are visual, they do not share the same qualities and they do not do the same things well.
It's a different form altogether, isn't it?
Exactly, and that needs to be recognized, because when you do a comic book and it just looks like the storyboard of a film, it's incredibly static, and there's too much that has been developed and that has evolved, since the beginning of what comics can do well to evoke everything from emotion to displaying impact to displaying explosions. There's so many special sound effects, effects like the whack marks when somebody punches somebody, the motion lines that
it's a language all of its own, isn't it? And
that Kirby would use so effectively as a design element. I mean, all of these things have been all these tools for so many people that are getting into comics now. These tools are laying unused. And I don't understand that, because they help comics do what comics do that much better. And a quick story is I'm often wrong about these things. Quite actually, more than I'm right, I'm wrong. But I remember going to see one of the Tim Story Fantastic Four movies. I think it was the first one. And yes, I know they didn't do Dr. Doom right.
Very
so
good.
Mr. Wright had to change. He wasn't wrong, but he had to be tweaked. Yes. But anyway, I went and saw this film, and when I saw really good CGI special effects of the Human Torch, my reaction was stupidly, wow, Alex Ross and Brian Hitch are out of a job. I mean, these guys that are doing photorealistic stuff and showing us what it would look like in real life, they're out of a job, because now with CGI, we can see what it looks like in real life. So we're all going to go back to drawing the Human Torch the way Jack Kirby designed it. We're all going to go back to a visual representation of what a man on fire looks like, and not try to do a realistic interpretation. Wow, this is great. The shackles are off. We can all do cartoons again. That kind of thing. We can all do comics again. I was wrong. I was absolutely wrong. And the next thing I knew, Captain America had to fly, and everybody was afraid of trunks, and everybody started following the movies, and that's not the way I was to go.
There's two schools now, I think. I mean, you see it, don't you? It's in superhero comics, because that's predominantly what we're talking about. There are these two schools of thought, I think, and you still do get the artists who are cartoonists predominantly, who produce really nice, clean line, representational stuff. People like Chris Samney.
He's the first one I thought of too.
Yeah. I mean, I love that stuff. And
he's terrific. I mean, there are some, not some, even most of them are fantastic illustrators. But you have to admit that the How to Draw Comics the Marvel way has been getting dusty up on the shelf.
Mine actually literally is quite dusty on my shelf. I've got it right here. It's
there aren't too many people using that outline, that structure, that framework for how they are, because melodrama has been bled out of the books. I mean, the big thing now is, a fan of current comics looks back at Sal Buscema's work, looks back at some of my work, and says, what's the deal with the pinprick eye, the pinprick pupils and the gaping jaws? And well, see, that was showing in an overly dramatic way, that was showing shock, that was showing dismay, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And now nobody's, even Chris Samney isn't really doing that. He's a fantastic illustrator. I'm not saying anything against him and his talent, but his approach to storytelling is not, what was developed and evolved as the Marvel style, which is something that, I think is kind of a shame, because it was a lot of fun. I mean, it was very engaging. I mean, fans of a certain age understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah, we're that age.
And younger people are looking at me and going, "Okay, Grandpa, yeah." I mean, is it your nap time yet? That.
Things do evolve, but I think that sometimes it can take a step backwards, Well,
that's the thing. I've been assessed by different. I've been around long enough, fortunately, that I have been assessed by several different eras standards. And when I first came in, I came in around at the time that Frank Miller was doing Daredevil and was bringing a lot of cinematography in there, and a certain type of storytelling, and a certain new aesthetic, a slightly more violent aesthetic, and a more brutal aesthetic. And I was working counter to that. I was seen as a throwback guy when I was even on Spider-Man, because I was embracing Ditko's version of the character.
Mm.
And then when we did Thor, I was allowed, Ralph Macchio kindly allowed me to do my own cover copy. He ended up liking my cover copy on my sketches. So I was putting them on the actual covers, and they were being carried through by production. So the book was looking, you know, kind of like a late 60s, early 70s type of a pastiche. And, you know, but now, you know, when you get into the 2000s and people are going, I don't know, his stuff looks very 90s.
That's weird.
And in the 90s, it looked very, you know, 70s, and in the 80s, it's been crazy.
I mean, I found it timeless at the you know, back then, because I was brought up on Ditko.
That's what I hope for.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm shooting for. I do the kind of comics that I would enjoy reading. You know, granted. I mean, one of the reasons that I'm enjoying my work on sitcomics so much is that Darren Henry, the publisher, is a child of 70s Marvel. Yeah. I mean, he tried to hire Sal Buscema to pencil in a Blue Baron, and Sal had already pretty much retired from penciling at that point.
Yeah.
But he said, you know, I'm working with Ron Frenz on Spider-Girl. If Ron's interested, I'd be happy to ink it. You know, that kind of thing. Cool. So, you know, and of all the offers I got, that was right there in my wheelhouse. You know, that I would love to just do superheroes until they throw dirt on me, whether it's commissions or sitcomics or Mr. Right or whatever it is. But that's I think the superhero genre is a fantastic way to tell stories about the human condition, you know, in the same way that Star Trek did or the Twilight Zone did. But I love the adventure characters. I love the action. And I think, you know, telling stories about heroic people who are trying to do the right thing but have feet of clay is a wonderful way to engage readers and to tell
it's stories. Always going to be compelling, isn't it? That
I think
as
so.
you know, the flawed hero, as you say, you know.
It always has been to me. Because you know, we all wish we could be that person. I mean, you know, whether it's being in a position to do the right, to help people, or whether it's just having the balls to do the right thing in any given situation. We all aspire to that. I know I do, and I think, you know, that's part of the allure of these characters. But I just think it's a wonderful delivery system for, you know, really solid stories about people trying to do the right thing, about, you know, what's right about us as a species and what's wrong with us as a species. And you know, I'm very proud of some of the stuff DeFalco and I have done. I mean, Eric Masterson had a conversation with Seth, the serpent god of death, you know, where he said, you know, Seth's only point was death always wins in the end.
Yeah.
But Eric said, yeah, except mankind has created high art and poetry and
it's immortality through art.
Every minute of every day in defiance of the finality of death. So screw you, man. You know, I mean, we were able to have these wonderful moments of, you know, philosophical debate with, you know, those larger concepts like Stan Lee used to have. That's the thing that always dragged me into the Marvel universe and kept me there. He was
never afraid of that, was he, Stan Lee? He was never afraid of these really sort of big, lofty ideas, really. You know,
and that's the thing. I mean, where else do you get? I mean, because, you know, years later after that Thunderstrike story, we had Spider-Girl facing Seth, the same character, and his tune hadn't changed. Death always wins in the end. And, you know, but Spider-Girl's response is, I'm a teenager. We don't think about death. She literally kicked him in the balls. You know, and
it's a good bit of symbolism there.
It was one of my favorite scenes, you know, because you can't scare a teenager talking about the ultimate finality of death, because they're not doing.
They haven't started thinking about it yet.
Trying to get themselves killed. You know, I mean, they don't recognize it.
It's not on their radar. Yeah.
You know, me sitting here at 61, I'm a bit preoccupied. But
we got a few more comics out here yet, Ron. We'll get a few more. I got a question from Sam. Did Ron realize the impact when he drew their first appearance in Thor 411?
No, it's basically the same answer as the black costume. But
Yeah,
I knew the one thing I knew about the New Warriors was when they were developing the series, Danny Fingeroth, who we worked with on Spider-Man, was going to be the editor of that. And I don't know what the circumstance was that I was having a conversation with Danny, and he was considering this young kid named Mark Bagley, who at that point had just done some annuals and all that kind of stuff. But he had some really solid storytelling. And I'm not saying that my opinion was the final deciding factor, but when Danny mentioned his name, I said, no, oh, that's a great idea. I think he'd be terrific. And so I knew, as well as DeFalco, that when they finally got Fabian Nicieza and Mark Bagley to do the monthly title, that they were in really, really good hands. We could sit back and say, we've done our part. DeFalco launched it, and then it was in the best hands possible to pursue that. That's my cell phone, and I
was going to say, is that you? I tried muting Ollie, but it wasn't Ollie.
No,
I don't have my. I'm very professional. I don't have my phone anywhere near me when I'm in the studio.
Well, I try to
My
be
front room.
It's my friends that. Oh no, this is the same solicitation call I've been getting all day. So.
One of those, yeah.
One of those, eh? Well, as the time's ticking on.
You never know. Rarely, if ever, is there a sense of, I think we're creating something really special.
Yeah, it's really hard to know that, isn't it? To actually predict that.
It's almost impossible because, you could, go left at the next junction and, how many really good ideas have gone into the crapper and, for either because somebody wasn't paying attention or the wrong person inherited the strip or, whatever. And it just doesn't click anymore. It happens all the time. So,
I mean, the amount of things you see that are like, this is going to be the next big thing. And then 3 issues later, it's never seen again. It just happens. It's really hard to predict, isn't it?
I mean, it's impossible to predict. I'll tell you
about the next big thing. The Blue Baron. I'm just looking at Blue Baron. I notice you've got a new comic of the Blue Baron coming up. It says here in previews catalogue, November the 3rd. Other areas are saying on the 27th. For those people like myself who are unfamiliar with the Blue Baron, could you tell us a little bit more about that, Ron? Because it looks like an interesting pedigree of creators on that one.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, actually, Sal Buscema was working with me on that as well. Darren Henry is the publisher of Sit Comics. His CV is filled with writing and show running comedy for television.
Yeah.
And he spent quite a bit of time over in England, actually, doing things for British television.
That's where he will have learned good comedy.
There you go. That's exactly. I've been told that. Anyway, he approached me because originally he wanted to do an anthology, and it quickly expanded to a line of books that this is something he always wanted to do. So he was taking his TV money and he was selling his comic book collection off bit by bit.
Wow.
To fund this thing. And the first title was The Blue Baron. And what he is very skilled at is he is taking classic comic book tropes and then injecting them with some kind of a twist, with usually a classic comedy twist.
Yeah.
But he's injecting a twist into it and then seeing where that leads the character. In the Blue Baron's case, the Blue Baron is a character that has either been alive since the Revolutionary War, or is a legacy character a la the Phantom or something.
Yeah.
And what happens is the Blue Baron and a young man named Ernie Rodriguez are involved in an accident, a super science accident that switches their personality, switches bodies. So it's, you know, classic superhero stuff meets Freaky Friday. And so the 13-year-old is trapped in the body of a 300-year-old superhero.
Right.
And the 300-year-old superhero is trapped in the body of a middle schooler.
Got some fun with that.
Wackiness ensues. And
Yeah.
he has created his own little universe of heroes that either have their own titles or are members of the Heroes Union, which is the premier super team of that universe.
Their Justice League or their
Yes,
Avengers.
or Avengers. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And except they're actually more of a business than both. You know, you actually get you benefit from your licensing, and it is a union more than it's
right.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, when you said union, I thought, that sounds more like
it's definitely union, because he wants to play up the idea that, in fact, I don't know why he started this, but the initial range of characters, both heroes and villains, are based on business terms.
Right.
The Blue Baron, you know, like a baron of industry.
There we go.
Startup is the speedster, and Windfall and Bull, and so all of these characters, even the bad guys like Takeover and Maven and Mr. Roller Coaster, they're all based on business terms.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the Heroes Union is the ultimate manifestation of that. And they're just a lot of fun characters. Again, he's doing all ages material. There's a little clock down in the corner that is that book is rated 8 o'clock family viewing hour.
Right.
It's wonderful. I mean, it's just a lot of really interesting takes on classic comic book tropes. He's got just recently he's enlisted Roger Stern to write the first issue of Heroes Union.
Fantastic.
He wrote the first 3 issues of Blue Baron himself, and then Roger Stern's coming in with issue 4. I'm doing layouts for Heroes Union number 2, which is a plot and a script by David Michelini. Yeah, and then Blue Baron number 4, which is the project that's on my table right now, is going to be plotted and scripted by, co-plotted and scripted by Roger Stern again. So, he's bringing in other writers now, but his individual voice for these characters is just a lot of fun. Because a lot of these issues have already been test marketed in Pennsylvania and smaller comic shops around the country.
Right.
What this is that's coming out, it's the first issue of Blue Baron. If you already have it, I don't know whether there's going to be any extras in it or not, but the difference is the original was just called the Blue Baron. These that are being released through comic shops now, through Diamond Distribution and international distribution, these are called the Unbeatable Blue Baron.
Right.
But the cover is the same. We're not trying to fool anybody. So if you already have it, you don't need it. But if you don't have it, it's great fun, and it happens right on the heels of the Heroes Union and number 1, which was out a couple of months ago, and did very well. So we have a lot of high hopes for this as a universe of new superheroes going forward. And if you haven't tried it, please give it a shot, because you may find your new favorite character.
Yeah. I mean, what I've enjoyed seeing over the last few years is the rise of the humor comic again. Whether it's the Blue Baron, Mark Russell does a fine line on satire comics, and it's seeming to grow again. People, whether it's because of COVID or going even beyond that, I think people
want light entertainment,
a funny book again, don't they?
Yeah,
a funny book by name, a funny book by nature. And I think this has got it all. Like I say, you've got the pedigree of writers, and you've got a look that's it is classic superhero stuff, isn't it? But the hopefulness with it as well.
I mean, there is this comedy bent to some of it, and it is written all ages and everything. But make no mistake, there's also the superhero drama I mean, in the first issue, Blue Baron gets a train dropped on him. So, it's classic Marvel.
As you do.
As you do, exactly. And it's wonderful stuff. I mean, but I was very happy to find Darren when I did, because I was getting, offers that were, there was one gentleman on private message on Facebook that was offering me horror work, which I was not interested in at all. And he decided the best way to try to talk me into it was to insult me, and that was interesting.
Well, that's going to work, isn't it?
But it's like, it's not like I have felt trapped by my reputation. I've been fortunate enough at Marvel and DC and to work with writers, primarily DeFalco, that I want to work with. It's always interesting when fans, feel sorry for you, or that wonderful word that's underrated is a big word on Facebook.
All right.
That everybody calls their favorite guy underrated because they don't feel everybody appreciates them as much as.
It's either underrated or legendary, Ron.
Take your pick.
Apparently, I'm somewhere in the middle. Yeah.
Legendarily underrated.
That sounds a little bit worse than underrated.
That's what I'm going to have to Falco have to use that all the time. Really underrated. So far, he's always come up with for me as unindicted co-conspirator. But anyway, but it's I'm glad to see that it's working that way, because I love classic comics, and if they went away completely, that would just be a shame, because I'll tell you where you see it the most these days is in the Marvel films. I mean, the Marvel films, in an attempt to include everybody, in an attempt to keep everybody entertained. My civilian friends who don't read comics can go to a Marvel movie and enjoy the royal hell out of it. Yeah. Do they remember all the connective tissue between the last 10 movies? No. But they enjoy the hell out of the 2 hours that they're sitting in the theater.
It works in both ways, doesn't it?
Exactly.
The fans can enjoy it and everyone else can enjoy it. They are very inclusive films, aren't they?
That's exactly it. And I see these movies with very good friends of mine who are civilians in that way, and they'll occasionally ask me stupid questions, and you answer it as quickly as possible, and then move on. Occasionally I'll try to give them primers going into the movie, and I have one friend who just hates when I do that because it sounds like I'm condescending, and I'm not condescending. I'm just trying to cut down on the questions. While I'm eating popcorn.
Because you want to watch the movie. You don't want questions while you're watching the movie.
Captain America is talking.
Yeah.
Yes, that kind of thing. But anyway. But I think Marvel found the formula. And what's interesting to me is they're not doing anything different than what Stan Lee did during the course of his tenure.
It's taking it straight out of that book, isn't it? It's just translating it into a different medium.
Yeah, they've just taken it to this broader platform. Yeah. That makes more money, that reaches more eyes, that
the whole idea of the collected universe, isn't it?
I wish to the comic gods that Jack Kirby were still alive to see this, because he always knew it. He always knew that these concepts and that these characters would have this kind of an appeal if you could just get it in front of as many people as possible.
Yeah. And if you could make it look right,
wherever he is looking down on us, I hope he's enjoying it, because he deserves it. And Ditko and all of them, Eisner, all those guys. I mean, when that kind of storytelling is brought to this level of dissemination, and it's as popular as it is, there's no other way to look at it other than these guys were right. I mean, this is compelling storytelling, period.
Yeah.
No matter what.
It is a shame that lots of them aren't here to see it. I think it is a real shame.
I mean, even as a fan, it's amazing to me, because I grew up in an era of television with the two Captain America pilots and the Doctor.
I remember those.
The Nick Hamm and Spider-Man, which have a lot of nostalgic value for me.
I still love watching them.
I remember when the first X-Men movie was coming out, and we were seeing the first pictures of Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, and I was like, holy, he looks like Wolverine. holy mackerel, he looks like Wolverine. And people are looking at me like I got 3 heads. And he said, what are you talking about? No, you have no idea.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going to happen.
It's such an important movie, that, wasn't it, for superhero fans? I remember watching it.
In many ways, it was.
It's
That
a big
cage fight.
statement.
That
Yeah,
cage
well, just-
fight, that first introduction of Hugh Jackman as Wolverine with the cigar in the cage, that sent shivers down me when I saw that. It was
There has been some classic storytelling, and I'll tell you the way it affects me as being lucky enough to be a storyteller for Marvel and for DC is a lot of those movies have a line in there, a character-centric line that I wish to God I had come up with. I mean, because the first one that came to mind when you were talking about the cage fight is when she asks, when Rogue asks if it hurts when the claws come out. He says, every time.
Great.
And it's just like, oh, damn it. And then the first Fantastic Four movie, as much as people like to hate on it, there's a line in there when, Susie says, Ben, we're all in this together. And he turns to her and he says, Susie, you got no idea how much I wish I was invisible right now.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
I think that movie had a lot of charm. I think people, like you say, a lot of people slate it.
I love those.
But I liked the
then they
family
saw the
feel.
Josh Trank one. That's why everyone loves the original.
Rise of the Silver Surfer is one of my favorite superheroes.
Yeah, it's a great Silver Surfer.
I don't understand why more wasn't made of the fact that these were characters that did not have secret identities. They were public figures.
Yeah.
They were, the wedding of Reed and Sue was being handled like, Brangelina or something like that.
Yeah.
No review I read made any point of, this is not the lone superhero with a mask and a secret identity. This was a whole different thing. And that surprised me because that's what made them unique in the comics world. It certainly made them unique at that point in movies because you had
I think it was timing. I think it was timing, Ron, because at the time a lot of superhero stuff was a bit dark, wasn't it? And everyone and the Fantastic Four they're celebrities. They haven't got secret identities. They're out in the open. It's very light, the whole look of it,
I enjoyed the performances. There was actually one of my quotes at the time was at that point I've enjoyed all the Spider-Man films to one degree or another. Certainly I've enjoyed all the actors that have been cast as Peter Parker. But as far as the characterization in the movie, I felt that the first Fantastic Four movie, and certainly Rise of the Silver Surfer, captured the personalities of the characters and the interrelationships of the characters. Yes. And to a degree that I had yet to see in Peter Parker in the cinema. I mean, I wish they had nailed how I see Pete as well as they nailed the relationship between Ben and Johnny and the relationship between Ben and Reed and the relationship between Johnny and Reed. And,
that interplay was great.
And, I thought, I have one close friend who thought that Jessica Alba was completely miscast as Susie. But what really rang true to me was her relationship with Johnny. The brother and sister relationship in that, with her trying to mother him. Yeah, but he didn't want to be mothered because they didn't have family. Was incredible to me. I thought it worked really well. And
I thought Ben, the whole thing with Ben and Alicia was really good.
Yeah,
there's that moment, the moment when he couldn't pick up the ring.
Yeah,
that just that was a brilliant.
I'm right there with you. with you.
I was feeling that.
The fact that it was a suit instead of CGI.
Yeah, it was extremely well done.
It felt real. Yeah.
Jack Kirby's original conception of Ben is that he's man-sized. He looks like the Thing, but he's man-sized, and I don't like the 10-foot, 12-foot versions of Ben Grimm. That some of the artists do because that just does not strike me. I can deal with a 10-foot Hulk, but Ben's not supposed to be that big. He's supposed to be a tragic human figure. So I'm still hoping to see that at some point. I thought the performances in those two movies were fantastic. So whatever Marvel ends up doing with the Fantastic Four, and God knows Facebook is going to be on fire when it happens.
We'll see. Yeah, it'll be exciting.
I can always pull out Rise of the Silver Surfer on DVD and sit and enjoy the hell out of it. But plus the fact nobody's going to come to your home and burn your favorite titles. Okay, you can always go back and read the
They're
comic
still
book.
there. They're still there. Yeah.
Nobody is destroying Superman. You can always go read your Superman comic.
Yeah.
If you don't like what they're doing now, don't read it.
That's exactly right. It's still there, isn't it? If you got to put, if you don't enjoy the modern stuff, just read the old stuff. It's not going anywhere.
I've done that many times. And I mean, I've spent the last, 10 or so years as a comics fan. I found a wonderful shop that has his entire backstock in long boxes. You know, he had enough room to put it all out, so you can just, go through it.
Oh,
and I've spent the last 10 or so years rebuying things I remember that I had as a kid that are dust now. You know, we're just torn to hell. Because I used to love those books to death.
Yeah.
And we
there
still
are
do.
still certain books that are burned in my brain.
Yes,
like an image on the cover or whatever. And so I now go out with a list and I seek them out. And I'm reading these stories for the first time in 50 years. And going like,
they still have the same impact.
That cover image always stuck in my head. Oh, that's what the story was about. I had it at a point where I probably couldn't even read yet. That kind of stuff.
Yes. Great visual medium.
You enjoyed the storytelling, didn't you? I remember having an old Hulk annual from 1979. It was Hulk versus the Inhumans. And I didn't know what was going on. I was like 4 or 5 or something, and I didn't know what was going on really. I wasn't really reading it, but I was following the story and what was happening. And I gave these characters their own names, because I couldn't read, but I still enjoyed it. What was going on between the Inhumans and the Hulk?
Oh no, the visual is just it's everything. Because my earliest attraction to Spider-Man was through the cartoon, the 67 cartoon.
Of course,
I would have been 6 or 7 years old. And I had the Spider-Man Ben Cooper Halloween costume. In fact, I still own the original mask to my Cooper. It survived. It's battered, but it's hanging on the wall in my studio.
Battle damaged.
Because that was one of the earliest visceral... the way I visually learned about Spider-Man, identified Spider-Man, and it's a gorgeous mask. It's very Ditko.
Yeah, we had a lot in Britain. We had the tradition of a lot of reprints. So you'd buy an issue of the Hulk, and because it was a weekly comic, they'd take a month's, chop it up, but then you'd get another comic really bizarre. So I remember at one time I was reading the Hulk on one part of the comic, and then Battle of the Planets that Marvel put out as well as the second part of the comic. And you're just like, this doesn't work, but it introduced us to Marvel in the bizarrest kind of way.
Yeah, to new stuff.
I've seen some of those books, Zoids always seem to have
Zoids.
Doctor Who and a Black Panther backup,
We'd still have the spinner racks, but I think for a lot of us in Britain, because of 2000 AD being on the shelf with other comics, we were more likely to pick up American reprints rather than the actual things themselves.
Yeah, well, you couldn't get them for a long time. I mean, the actual American monthlies.
That's why I appreciate exactly the era I grew up in. I mean, the late 60s, early 70s are always going to be my wheelhouse because that's what comics were when I discovered them and was deep into them.
Yes.
But I also lived during a period where we had Marvel's Greatest Comics, Marvel Tales, these regular reprint comics.
They were great.
That kept you informed to what the legacy of the character was. I mean, because there are plenty of people on my Facebook page that are not of an age that even read my stuff back in the 80s. I mean, they might be Spider-Girl fans who have no idea what other stuff I've done. It's still interesting to me that a lot of the guys that are fans of my work on Superman don't know that I have a CV at Marvel and vice versa.
Wow. That's interesting.
Every time I put a post up, I'm surprised at the reaction. Because, every time I put a Batman post up, somebody says, "I've never seen you do Batman before."
Yeah. I thought that the other day when you did a Batman.
Go up to the little search engine and put in Ron Frenz Batman and see how many things come up. Come on, guys.
Do it, Ollie. Do it.
Well, look, I remember reading Spider-Man when Ron came over to DC for that. You see, I'm doing Ron Frenz. I'm multitasking now.
He's doing it now.
So,
He's doing it now.
so as I said, Ron introduced me to Marvel through Spider-Man,
Hmm.
and then to see him a few years later doing Superman was a big treat as well. So I certainly remember Ron being at DC.
Yeah, it was a treat for me too, because I was under contract at Marvel, and it was during that terrible period where half the line was canceled because Ron Perlman's people thought that would be a great idea to help sell the other half of the line, and Thunderstrike ended up getting canceled. And the great Mark Grunwald did what he could to try to help the people that were on contract, but there was just no work. So at that point, Brett Breeding, I'm just dropping names like crazy.
Yeah, but it's an interesting story.
Had informed Mike Carlin, who was now, had been on the managing editor of all the Superman titles. He was now an executive editor, but Brett let him know that I was that Thunderstrike was wrapping up, and because Mike is completely against poaching talent of any kind,
right?
So he offered me a berth on the Superman books, which he saved my ass because I was looking for one.
It was and Superman was doing well then as well, wasn't it?
It was going through an interesting transitional phase because Mike was not the guiding hand anymore. A lot of the guys who did work on the original Triangle books and everything were still there. Some of them were still there. There was some new blood coming in like me, but there were also, we went through, in that short period of time, we went through 2 managing editors because trying to be Mike Carlin is almost impossible.
Yeah.
I can imagine. It seems wherever you go, you've got to do a new costume for the superhero, Ron.
Yeah.
Is that really into your contract?
People actually blame, that is something I'm known for. And I swear to God, in most cases, I am just the poor slob that is sitting in the car with the engine running. I am not, I did not plan the heist. The Superman thing, we were all invited to, here's the deal. Superman has new powers. His new costume is a containment suit. You're all welcome to turn in designs. And I wasn't even going to do one because I was one of the new kids on the block. But I decided, I had this one idea with the S and the lightning bolt. And I went, I'll put it on paper. I'll send it in. And lo and behold, they picked it. I think they picked mine because I was the only one. 2 reasons. One, I was the only one who messed with the S symbol and made it look like a lightning bolt, which really helped with marketing the change, And 2, I didn't know about this at the time, but apparently for years, Glenn Whitmore, the colorist I was just praising at the beginning of the show, he had been pushing to do a new revamped version of Superman Red, Superman Blue, which was a famous
classic story,
story. And they'd been pushing to do that. So I think when they saw that mine was monochromatic blue, somebody said, you know what, this has an added value because then we can finally do Superman Red, Superman Blue and get Glenn off our backs. But so I think that was another reason why it was chosen. But yeah, that has to be one of the most reproduced pieces of art I've ever done.
Really? That's interesting.
It appeared in TV Guide here in the States. Wow. It appeared in newspapers across the country.
It was a big story. It was a huge story here.
PC had a whole machine behind it. And we were all told, we were actually told what to say. We were told,
really? Wow.
If they ask, is this permanent? We were told to just say with a smile, this is Superman now.
Non-committal.
Yeah.
They didn't want us going, of course it's not going to last. What, have you ever read a comic book? That kind of thing. But
everyone knows.
Because I actually showed up at a TV studio here in Pittsburgh to do a remote feed with, I think it was Carl Kiesel. And it was the 2 of us being interviewed about it. Yeah, there's Mr. Wright. See?
There we go.
Yeah.
That's one
I thought it was about time we started talking about it.
It's one of my favorite designs that I've ever come up with. I love the simplicity of it. I love everything about it. I was just always.
I love the
very
cowl. I love that cowl. It's just a classic.
Yeah, the helmet. I mean, and that was before I saw the Captain America movie helmet. You know, I just always loved the original Cap thing where it had the bare neck, so the helmet was obviously separate. So I wanted to come up with something similar. And
cool.
you know, there's so much of it is, you know, if you look at it now, you're kind of going, well, you know, you see that all the time in the Marvel movies. But I actually designed that before the Marvel movies. So
there you go.
Great minds.
And the good thing is, it is already fully funded. This is the British money, but I can see it's really broken sort of very moderate goal to begin with. Anyway, what kind of stretch goals are being offered, Ron?
Well, we're shooting for stretch goals now, and there are still conversations going on about, you know, exactly what's going to be added and how we're going to go about it. But I try to stay out of those conversations as much as
no
possible.
worries.
I just draw the thing.
Tom DeFalco is very, very involved in all of those conversations. But
there they all are.
Buy the boys around if you can. If all you can spare is $10, you know, that kind of thing. But it was very gratifying to see. You know, we were fully funded within 8 hours.
Fantastic.
And we're going. You know, we're pushing for stretch goals now and stuff. And, you know, I don't know, as far as the publishers that are backing us, I don't know exactly what they need to make to break even or make a profit. I have no idea because I just want to draw.
Well, this is a series, isn't it, Ron? So
it is designed to be a series, yes.
Yeah.
We'll see where it goes from here. But, I mean, to give you a little bit of background, Wright, with the periods, what it stands for, what Mr. Wright stands for.
I was wondering.
Is multi-platform, real-time, reality-integrated gravitic hologram technology.
Whoa.
And
well remembered
is Professor Poindexter Click. He goes by Dex. He goes by Dex. He has invented this technology where by manipulating magnetic fields, he can create a gravity center in holograms, which effectively makes them solid.
Right.
They have mass because they have a gravity center. So he is developing these as workers and, you know, people in high risk professions and everything. These things could help. And, you know, of course, the military is also interested in the military application.
Yeah.
He is not interested in that at all. What has happened is a young kid who hangs around with his niece, Carly, whose name is Jeffrey Lopez. He has taken the program and just on the side messing around with it because he's a prodigy. He's created a superhero version of the program Avatar.
Right. And so he's just hijacked it then, basically.
Yeah, he's kind of hijacked and created his own superhero version of it. And the technology still isn't workable. The good elements of the government are offering to help him fund the rest of the research because he can't get the gravity center to hold. Okay, so it's not viable. It's not a viable technology yet because he can't get the gravity center to hold. And yet, somehow, when Jeffrey is handling his game player and he activates Mr. Wright, it works. Dex is looking for why. Why does that work? And of course, somebody suggests, well, maybe it's because Jeff believes. And Dex is thinking, I'd really like to have a more scientific explanation. Thank you very much. You know, so he's still looking into it, and that's going to be the ongoing challenge of the strip. We also find out that, you know, there is jeopardy involved for Jeff that Dex does not know about initially, you know, and so there's a lot of there's some secrets amongst the cast, amongst Jeff and the niece Carly are holding some secrets back from Dex and make a deal about Carly watching Jeff's back, you know, things like that really appeal to me as far as, you know, bouncing the characters off each other. We have a character named Honor Freeman who represents the more moral government presence,
right?
Who is going to hang around New Hope City to find out more about this Mr. Wright character, who shows up in the first issue. And so, we have some nice, interesting stuff planned. There's some stories we've talked about down the road where we find out who Dex has based the Avatar on. That brings in some family background and all this kind of stuff, and it would be a hell of a run. I mean, if it goes that direction, nobody will be happier than me to finally get stories in front of people, because it's always been something that I've been very fond of and very committed to. So
it sounds like there's a lot of really good sort of character drama going on, as well as all the action. I mean, looking at the artwork just here on the Kickstarter, there's all that classic action that you expect.
Pages back up
all
again.
The dynamic stuff.
There you go.
But it's good to hear that there's also a lot of character drama as well, because that's one of the things that I always love about Tom's writing. This and the combination of the action and the drama.
You're not going to find a comic written by Tom that he doesn't insist. That's something that's our favorite part of creating these types of series, is to start building the cast as we need, because every supporting cast member, of course, should be telling you something important about the lead character, should be informing and serving a function to the lead character. And we've set up a dynamic where there is it's in a small, medium-sized, like Pittsburgh-sized city called New Hope, and there is an industry in New Hope called Hope Worldwide, that the city is actually named after this family. They helped, they go back.
They're founders of the
city. They helped found
the
city back in the day, and the current representative of that family is a gentleman named Apollo Hope, who is very full of himself and likable yet very arrogant character, who is one of those people that is positioned to create a lot of story and also be the spoiler in the course of stories and stuff. His father, who is named Jupiter Hope, which is why one would name your son Apollo. If you're wondering who would name their son Apollo, possibly somebody named Jupiter would be. And Jupiter Hope, he and Professor Click were best friends. They were the ones who created some of this technology early on in a garage, that kind of thing. The early forms of this technology. And we learned about that in the course of the first few issues. You get more background on the characters and everything. But we have for this, we have 2 lead features that will introduce all the characters, and one of the stretch goals adds a 5-page story that actually has seen print once before as part of a flip book for Randy O'Donnell is the Man back in the day with Image. We previewed Mr. Wright, and it was so one of the stretch goals is to add that to the package.
That's cool.
But generally we'd be looking at a structure of like 2 11-page stories.
I see.
That with a beginning, a middle, and an end that continue building the characters, and whether or not it would go to full issue epics, that would be dictated by the story. Kind of thing. That's
an interesting way of doing it. That reminds me of the old, Astonishing Tales and all that sort of stuff.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And what I like is what always tends to affect me with like 6-issue epics and things like this, not just as a reader, but also as a creative, is you get tired of drawing the same environments. If you're doing a 6-issue epic, I get bored with drawing the same environment issue after issue after issue after issue. And the character development is all going to happen at the same speed it would in any given comic book. But we're going to be creating new environments. We're going to be putting the characters in different situations. We're going to be putting them through their paces a little faster. You're going to be seeing Mr. Wright in more a larger variety of situations in the same number of issues, you know, and we're going to be throwing new characters at you that much quicker. And you know, I mean, sometimes sometimes it's hard to believe when you see like a big 6-issue epic or a 3-year epic. It almost starts to feel like the writer only has one idea
and they're just
for
running
this
with
character that he wants to stretch out as long as possible.
It seems to be like it's to serve the trade market, isn't it? Really, it's just
there is a little bit of that with the 6-issue timing and stuff. But you know, every once in a while, it's hard for it not to feel like you just want to stretch out the ideas you have and dole them out at a slower pace because you're not sure what the next idea is.
Yeah,
DeFalco,
I think
working with DeFalco has trained me to kind of identify as idea machines. That's our job. Our job more than anything else. Of course, you know, his is to put the words together and type them up. Mine is to draw the figures and draw the backgrounds and all this. Sal's is to ink it. You know, Glenn Whitmore's is to cut. But all of our jobs together, what we are paid to do is come up with those ideas, is to you know, make sure we have ideas that are going to fill the next issue and the issue after that. You need a bad guy? Well, then we got to come up with a new bad guy. That's what they're paying us to do, you know, that kind of thing. And that's why on Spider-Man, DeFalco, we didn't use any of the
many.
As frustrated as I was, we didn't use any of the classic villains. Tom came in with his self-imposed edict where we were going to create new characters, and some of them clicked and some of them didn't. Silver Sable,
you tried. You just keep trying.
Got her own book. You know, Puma was used by a whole bunch of other writers.
Yeah,
you know, it's very flattering when a character hits and is intriguing enough to other writers to feature him and stuff. So that's always wonderful. I mean, Silver Sable's been in almost every animated permutation of Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I mean,
great
it's
character.
incredible. It's in the video games, the whole 9 yards, you know.
Yeah.
So when it works, it's great. But that's our job. Create. Make stuff.
And of course, you're free to do that here as well now, because you know, for writers at Marvel now, it's like there's a sort of not an incentive, is there, to create new characters because they're not good. They're not their characters. Yeah,
I've heard that. It's a shame. That's something that started as far back as the Image stuff. Yeah, but now. I don't deny that for a creative, that's something that could that could be an issue. I will honestly tell you that I guess DeFalco and I are just too dumb to think that way. We never.
You're just having too much fun.
That never once occurred to us that that's too good of an idea, Ron. You know, that kind of thing. I mean, MC2 was already, you know, Spider-Girl was the only book surviving from MC2 at the point that we took, you know, Mr. Wright from being a possible supporting character, and then because he wasn't evolved at that point, he was just a name and a red and white costume. It wasn't even the same costume. I mean, he was completely redesigned as a solo character. So, you know, it was, and it took a while. I mean, I have, you know, like, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, about 3 permutations of the character before I came up with the art design that I love so much. Because, see, just if I may for a second indulge myself.
Go for it.
If you look at the R, okay, you see it's on the front and back, which is always one of my favorite design elements. You know,
nice design.
For like Spider-Man and Superman and characters like that,
it's classic.
That actually have the symbol on both front and back. But if you look at this character, the R, the stem of the R comes down into the trunk line, right?
Yeah.
Then it goes up and around his back and becomes the other leg of the R.
The other R. Yeah. It's a great design.
The front and back R's are connected. They're a continuing design around the character. And once I came up with that idea and was able to make it big enough to balance the red, I just felt like, let's build the character around that. And the headpiece was something that had been a part of the original concept.
Yeah.
I just refined it a bit. But and there's definitely, some people have noticed when we were putting up the links to the Indiegogo campaign and everything, somebody said, that they could see some Bruce Timm in it. And my answer was just always, I was huge. I'm a huge Bruce Timm fan.
Yeah.
For the simple reason that I worship simplicity in design.
Yeah.
I am not the type of guy that signs on for a book and I'm going to do 3 issues or I'm going to do 6 issues or something. When I'm lucky enough to be awarded a title, I'm in for the duration. But I also recognize that character designs with all those lines on them and every lace on the boots and every zipper and all that kind of stuff, they're a bear and a half to draw on a monthly schedule.
All those pouches.
Mr. Wright is very much my design aesthetic. Keep it dynamic and keep it simple, because you're going to be drawing it over and over. And over.
Yeah,
definitely.
Not a single pouch in sight.
And the action flows, He does the action flow.
But they're simply drawn pouches.
Yeah, they're on his belt where they belong.
And I also guarantee you that we will see what's in those pouches. They're not just there
right.
to go, Right. Well, that was something we did. I wanted to do it. I don't know if you guys remember. In 2010, we did a 5-issue, I think it was, Thunderstrike miniseries. Where the gentleman at Marvel that was in charge of trade reprints or something like that, I think, Tom put out the question, is anybody interested in seeing Ron and I do anything? Because Tom is one of the many times Tom was getting ready to retire.
All right.
And he just put it out there, is anybody interested in Ron and I doing anything? And somebody said, I'd love to see a Thunderstrike miniseries. Now, at that time, Tom and I didn't feel it was right to bring Eric back or anything. So we actually have a legacy character that we had handled in MC2. So we figured, well, let's do a 616 version of Kevin Masterson. Enough time has passed. So everywhere we went right with the MC2 version, we went left. Okay. But the point I wanted to bring up in the design of the character, as the character evolves over the 5 issues, is we actually show all of the different circumstances that his costume, his ultimate costume, is addressing. At one point, he's blinded by a blast of light from the bad guy. So part of his final design are goggles that he actually wears. They don't just sit up on his head all the time. He actually wears them.
They're practical.
Because at one point he was blinded. At one point, he's thrown through several building walls and he is coughing on the dust. So part of his design is a kerchief like the first responders were wearing in New York to protect himself from particulate matter and all this kind of stuff. So that's actually part of his design. Another part of his design are work gloves, because of he's not completely invulnerable, that kind of thing. So it was fun for me because I wanted to actually show in the evolution of the character getting to his final form the practicality of what he was choosing to make part of his final form. And I don't know, some people picked up on it, some people didn't. That's fine. But it was,
it's good to have that, isn't it? That sort of functional element to it.
I think it's something I always consider for the character, that kind of thing. So.
There's a lot of costume designs. You look at them and you think, I'm surprised they can even walk in it.
Well, there is that. There are a few that, if the way they design the shoulder epaulets is, if they raise their arms, they're going to pierce their ears, and they're going to crush their own heads. So you got to be careful with some of that stuff. You got to be careful with some of that.
I mean, it sort of works. It's comics. You can get away with it. You can
cheat it. Yeah, you can always cheat it.
Yeah, what you got there? I think Ollie's going to bring.
Oh, there we got a picture of Thunderstrike.
Yeah, there it is. There it is.
I can't believe that's 2010.
It was all collected in a trade paperback called Youth in Revolt, because that we didn't pick that title, but that's how it was collected. But yeah, that's the final issue of the 5-issue run. It was a lot of fun. It was a neat story because Tom and I hadn't worked in the 616 in quite a while, as while Steve Rogers was wearing that. He was kind of running Shield, and he was wearing that outfit with the star and the lines coming
yeah.
out.
Oh, right. Yeah.
God, was that 10 years ago? Jesus.
It's gone quick, hasn't it?
Wow.
Doesn't seem like 5 minutes.
Yeah, but it was all of those kind of characters. He was running Shield along with Sharon Carter, and so we got to play with some of those characters and
cool.
and bring back characters from the original Thunderstrike series. Bobby Steele, his adopted dad, and his mom Marcy, and all of that. It was a lot of fun to do because, you know, as I said, at that point in Tom and I and Mai's life, we did not feel it was playing fair to just bring Eric back. You know, not that we couldn't have come up with an idea to do it. It's not, you know, but we just felt, you know, but when you're actually handed a genuine opportunity where there is a legacy character, where anybody who read Thunderstrike, anybody who read our Thor run knows Kevin Masterson. And, you know, we've seen him as a child. We've watched him grow up. So why not take advantage of that situation where you don't have to invent a legacy character? He's standing right there. Let's just tell his story, you know. So
it's cool. I'm still getting over the fact that it was 10 years ago.
I know.
It's just gone so quickly.
Believe me, guys, it's even harder on me. When people talk about, you know, the Spider-Man run and it's still fresh to them, I just recently did a post about the black costume and Venom. And when I think that, you know, were you talking like 85? I mean, my gosh.
It really doesn't seem that long ago. Well, we've done an hour and a half now, Ron. It's because it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, and the time has just gone so quickly. I can't believe it.
Really has.
There is one question, if you don't mind,
Please.
from a viewer. I'm going to bring up, Ron. What do you think about Amazing Spider-Man 74, where the deal with Mephisto was because Mephisto had a vision that Pete, MJ's daughter, Mayday Parker, would dethrone him in the future?
I actually read that issue because I got a comp copy of my alternate cover, so that Sal and I did together.
Oh, right.
Oh, thanks for the question, Greg.
So they actually sent me a free copy, and I was able to read it. Now, in all fairness, Greg, they did play fast and loose with what version and MJ's daughter it would be, or Pete's
They do leave it very open, don't they?
They left it pretty open.
Yeah.
But what I found fascinating, I think it's great. I think the entire Marvel universe should hinge on Mayday Parker, to tell you the truth. But what was interesting about it is back when they did One More Day, and they were talking about doing the deal with the devil and all this kind of stuff, Tom DeFalco had a conversation with Joe Quesada where he said, you know, Joe, this is a really radical idea. You know, everybody had an opinion about whether or not Peter Parker should make a deal with the devil. Everybody still has an opinion about whether or not Peter Parker should have made a deal with the devil to save Aunt May, especially since he had already gone through her dying like 2 or 3 times already. You'd think he'd be used to it by now. Anyway, but Tom approached Joe Quesada and actually kind of, you know, good-naturedly said, you know, if you ever need a safety valve, because, you know, oftentimes when you're doing something risky story-wise, it's not a bad idea to kind of plot how to back out of it without losing any limbs, you know, that kind of stuff. And what Tom offered Joe was Spider-Girl is there. She exists in a possible future. I said, so if you need an out, you know, at the time she was the only future daughter. You know, they've since done Renew Your Love, all that kind of stuff with Annie. But you know, at the time he offered that as a safety valve, as a get out of jail free card. And his impression was that Quesada was a little offended that it was suggested that this is anything but a genius idea.
Oh, right, of course, yeah. I don't need a safety net. This is great. This is going to go down really well.
Quite
Little
frankly,
did he know.
there was this one idea that I had that we never got around to in Spider-Girl. That it's kind of convoluted, but I was a huge fan of the old Spider-Man cartoon. I talked about that earlier, and there were times where we would try to take concepts and characters based on some of the characters from the old cartoon, and I would include them in Spider-Girl. We did, I'll leave it up to the fans to know what some of those characters were. And there was one character that had these wax figures that came to life. That
I remember that. I've got a video of that one.
and I was interested in doing a version of it where instead of suggesting they were robots or something, that this was actually somebody who had made a deal with the devil. Okay. And in the course of the story, one of the little couple of panels that I wanted to get into that story were Mephisto, when he comes to collect his price from the museum curator, notices Spider-Girl. And basically is looking over and going, wait a minute, why the hell does she exist? Because he had broken them up. Right.
Yeah.
And kind of start suggesting that, between the realities and all this kind of stuff, that Mephisto is starting to get a sense that he's playing whack-a-mole if you're really trying to prevent something from happening. You have alternate realities to deal with and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I was
never ending.
and for Mayday, it would have been her first encounter with true evil. With a sense of, oh my God, this isn't like some bad guy, this
some crook.
It's not a crook. It's not somebody who is even, sociopathic. This is like true evil, and it was, it was going to be a wacky story. You were going to get her supporting cast, the kids from school were all going to dress up as the Scooby-Doo characters and, for Halloween party and stuff.
Oh. I feel like we've missed out on something.
No, it's one of the great one-issue stories that would have just been a classic. I'm sure. Because now I never have to put my money where my mouth is.
But you wouldn't have known it at the time, anyway.
It was one of those things where it's interesting. I actually read the Spider-Girls mini that came out of the last Spider-Geddon or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And watched those characters Annie interact with Mayday, and the character used to be Anya. We liked her as Aranya. We used her in Spider-Girl as a woman, a grown woman. And these characters, it's interesting. I mean, I'm a little, peeved that Spider-Gwen kind of came in and she's a runner, so let's use her instead of Mayday.
But
it sounds like Mayday might still have a day again with Amazing Spider-Man 74 coming out, because there'll be so many questions asked that eventually Marvel will have to do something about that. It might take another 10 years, but it'll happen.
Well, but you did notice, I mean, as we said, I mean, even the costume, it was like a combination of the Spider-Girl that appeared in the Old Man Wolverine series, and it was sort of kind of Annie and sort of kind of May and sort of so they were really just kind of playing fast and loose with it. And if they want Tom and I to come back and do a mini series where Mayday kicks Mephisto's ass, they have my number. Well,
anything could happen in an alternative
we'll be happy
dimension.
to make it something worth reading, if they want to do that. But
I'd love to see that.
I mean, the comics is also getting to the point now where the fact that, the idea that they would hire two middle-aged white guys to write a teenage girl is probably slim to none these days. I mean, you have to have radiation poisoning to write the Hulk these days. Otherwise, it's not authentic. And I don't mean to shit on the entire idea, because I think it's a legitimate concern at times. But there is an argument for writing character, and just the fact that I've met so many young people who grew up reading Spider-Girl and relating to Spider-Girl. Young women who related to Spider-Girl. DeFalco was doing something right.
Yeah, he definitely was. I mean,
he wasn't trying to become a teenage girl or anything. No. He was observing his niece. He was observing his brother, and their
taking from life.
And
taking from his own experience. Yeah,
and he was putting her in situations, and he was writing character. He was writing a young woman, a person who was trying to do the right thing in ridiculous situations.
I think a lot of people related to that, and a lot of young guys really enjoyed that strip as well. You know, it had a mass appeal.
It's amazing because I have never met a Spider-Girl fan who disappointed me. They're all incredibly neat people, and it's just an amazing experience to meet and talk to Spider-Girl fans because they're all really terrific people. Some of them have gotten into the medical field. Some of them are, doing. It's incredible the things they're doing, and they're just all really. I've never been part of a strip where everybody who loved it for the right reasons. The closest we come is like Thunderstrike, because Thunderstrike ran for 2 years, forever ago.
Yeah.
And I still meet people at conventions who talk about Eric Masterson being there.
Wow. That's had an impression, hasn't it?
Never ceases to blow my mind, and it's very humbling. And to be a part of creating something that affected somebody like that is wonderful. It's never going to be anything less than wonderful.
But it's nice that you can appreciate that and you can take stock of it.
I'm the luckiest guy in the world. You may think it's you, Ollie. You may think it's you. You're right. I mean, how many guys at 6 or 7, want to grow up and work for Marvel Comics and draw Spider-Man?
Well, there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
That doesn't happen all the time.
No, you're right. You're in a sort of like a golden circle of people who manage to achieve that.
It's a very small. It's a small group of people.
I was going to say legendary.
Legendary. Well, tonight, Ron,
the sweat of my toil, and
we have been lucky tonight because we've had a chance to talk.
Wow,
to you.
we have.
And
please, come on,
it's been
really great good. Listening. All we've had to do is sit back and listen. Even that last question.
Yeah.
Even that last question, I was expecting you to say, I've not read the latest Amazing Spider-Man. To come out with a 10-minute anecdote that was as fascinating and as informative. No, it's great stuff. We've gone well over our hour limit, and I couldn't be happier, Ron, having met you online and discussed your very colourful career in comics.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure.
The kindest way anybody has ever told me to shut up.
Well, it is 9:45 over here.
It's 9:45.
I have a little tear right here. And basically, you just used the Queen's English to tell me that I talk too much. And I've never been more moved. And I thank you.
Not at all. You trust me, over a pint of beer, I can out-talk anyone. But I can also listen when I have to. And tonight was one of those nights that, honestly,
it's been great.
I knew I didn't have to do any research for this one other than what I'd read as a teenager and just listening to, even behind the scenes, 5 minutes before we went on live. I knew it would be one of those great little shows.
And I never prepped for these either. I've had a lot of fun just having these types of discussions. And I mean, I can talk comics at any time. The only time I needed to prep one time is I did a podcast that was specifically about the 2 issues of Further Adventures of Indiana Jones. That I did back in the 80s.
That's very specific, isn't
it?
And
I didn't remember anything. I had like one story to tell, and I was so rude. So I had to go look up those issues and read them again so I could. And that reminded me of a few things. And I went, okay. So we ended up being able to have a discussion about it. But otherwise, I was just like, I was afraid. Sal Buscema, God love him. You try to interview Sal, and he is game. I mean, he's a wonderful, wonderful man. Very colorful and just a sweet, sweet guy. but he honestly does not remember most of this kind of stuff.
Oh,
Wow.
And
Wow.
I mean, he was feeding his family. He was the amount of work he did. The volume.
Incredible.
And one time we were supposed to do one of these types of things together, and I completely blanked out on it. I was over at my studio and completely forgot about it. And it was just supposed to be a phone interview type thing, and we were going to do it together. And I missed it completely, but they got Sal, so they had a wonderful interview with Sal. But when I called him up to apologize, and I said, "I'm so sorry." And he goes, "No, it's okay, Ron." And it went fine. He said, "But this one guy, he wouldn't let go of this one cover. He wanted me to say something about this one cover for a Marvel 2-in-1 with like Captain America and the Guardians of the Galaxy." I said, "Sal, you didn't do that cover. That was John." And he went, "Sweet. That's why I needed you there." I said, "Yeah, we could have nipped that one in the bud." Because what I remember, that was John and like Esposito, and I think Romita retouched some of the Captain America figure, and he goes, "Oh, just stop. You're showing off now."
How are you supposed to remember all that stuff? I mean, God, how many covers did Sal
live through
do?
it? That's how you meant to remember it, I suppose.
That's fanboy stuff. That's just fanboy stuff now.
Definitely.
Because I don't know. I couldn't even come close to telling you how many pages Sal did or how many covers Sal did.
No, that would be
the ones that are burned on my brain. I can tell you things I noticed, and I can things I even looked up. I mean, one of the things that was amazing to me is one of the earliest pros I got to talk to was Marie Severin, and she was incredibly sweet. But I didn't realize at the time that she was doing cover sketches for a lot of the covers that were being produced. And some of my favorite Sal covers were off of a sketch by Marie. Because now with the internet, I see these rough sketches and I'm going, wait a minute, I recognize that. And Sal always had the freedom to play with the figure a little bit and everything, as long as the scene was communicating what was in the sketch, that kind of thing. And some of my all-time favorite Sals are still, pencil and ink by Sal, but now I have the added layer of understanding that Marie was contributing to these things.
Wow, that's really interesting.
She's just an incredible craftsman. She's an amazing lady. But she looked at my stuff early on and had a certain. I didn't have any storytelling at the time. I just had drawings of superheroes and stuff. And she had enough of a sense that I could do the storytelling. She said, "You should go to Jim Shooter," and she'd ask him for this was at a convention. She would go to Jim Shooter and ask him for the sample plot and produce some pages. And I chickened out. I mean, that year I chickened out. Didn't feel like I was ready yet. And I remember her also telling me that I couldn't draw knees.
Right.
Knees.
I was doing the upper thigh, and
usually horses or cars.
I was doing the calf, and I was doing the upper thigh, and then I was just doing this little
squiggle,
little narrow section with a ball on it. She goes, "That's not what a knee looks like, Ron. Look at me." That's
brilliant.
Learn how to draw knees.
We found your kryptonite.
I'm better now than I was then. Come on, I learned something.
That's fantastic. Yeah. It's nice. It's encouraging to know that even a seasoned artist as yourself, had these weaknesses. It encourages us all when we have our weaknesses to know
what's
that
crazy is
overcome them.
Occasionally on Facebook, I'll find an old sketchbook or something, and I'll put it up and fans, God love them. I mean, they don't make any comparisons to what I did back in art school, what I'm doing now, because not that I'm really inviting a conversation about how much I needed to improve, but it would be nice if somebody would say, "Well, it's nice to see that you got better."
Or the work, the work that you put in. Well, those knees are great.
I have a very dear friend who will shamelessly admit that his favorite stuff I've ever done was my Kesar run, and I'm like,
really?
Ouch! I mean, if only because that was the first thing I did for Marvel. I would like to think that the work I've done since has improved, that kind of thing. But he just loved that. He loved what Buscema was writing, and he loved the character and all that.
And fans attach, don't they, to those things? I mean, it's like, one of my all-time favorite comics is David Mazzucchelli's Daredevil run with Frank Miller, and apparently he looks back on that with disdain, but
Really?
for me,
Wow, that's a shame.
yeah, but maybe not disdain, but he's moved on, shall we say, as every artist does,
The closest I ever came to that was an early issue of the Avengers. I had my original copy, didn't have a cover anymore. It was the issue that introduced the Grandmaster, actually, with Kang.
All right.
The Avengers. It was drawn by Sal and inked by Sam Granger. And I actually found my coverless copy of it. Of all the things I was thinking about having Sal sign, we were doing a convention together. So I packed that in my stuff and I took it with me. And I said, it might be something I actually asked Sal to sign for me.
Yeah.
And we were standing waiting for dinner one night. And I said, what the hell, I'll take it down. And so I took it down and he goes, what do you got there? And I said, and I handed it to him. And then I was talking to DeFalco while he was looking through it. And I looked back at him. I was about to ask him to sign it for me. And he holds it up. He goes, you like this crap? So he said, I can't ask him to sign it now.
It was my favorite comic.
Yeah, this is what made me love you.
Yeah,
that kind of thing. But it was crazy. Man. Yeah, it's nuts when that happens, but it's bound to happen sooner or later.
Yeah.
So I understand John Buscema used to take great pleasure. There was another great illustrator, Doug Wildey, used to, I understand, take great pleasure with the fans. They would say, boy, I love your work. Really? Which piece? Why? Really?
Oh, really?
And tell me why, because I'm not sure I could do that either, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I do have a copy of the book that they did of Sal. I forget who the publisher was, whether it was Tomorrow's or who it was. But they did a book called Sal Buscema, Marvel's Fast and Furious Penciler, which I don't know what that title is trying to suggest. He's not a very
furious.
He's not furious at all. But he did autograph a copy for me, and he inscribed it.
Cool.
Put a personal message in there for me and stuff. And the idea that I'm friends with Sal Buscema is never not going to blow my mind.
Yeah.
The fact that I got to work with and become friends with Joe Sinnott is never not going to blow my mind. The fact that I did more than one project with Stan Lee. I mean, it's crazy. Crazy.
There's your legends.
Yeah,
absolute real legends.
Given the situation, given any potential situation, Stan actually knew who I was. I took a trip out to California one time. We had just done the Spider-Man annual where Jonah Jameson got married.
All right, yeah.
So I knew Stan had scripted that over a plot by DeFalco. And so I knew Stan would at least know who I was at that frame of time.
Yeah.
So my girlfriend at the time, we were going out to California for something else, but I was able to contact Marvel Studios out there at the time and make an appointment to an audience with Stan.
Cool.
Because I figured this was a window where he would actually know who I am and know because he'd actually written a letter to Danny Fingeroth mentioning my work. Danny sent me a copy of it. It would be very special for me that he complimented the work that I had done. And anyway, so I got to spend like 45 minutes or an hour just sitting and chatting with Stan. It was incredible.
I bet.
And then I also did like 9 weekends of the 9 Sundays of the Spider-Man newspaper strip at one point.
Okay, yeah.
Right. And that was, it was while I was trying to do Thor, and we were even doing bi-weeklies during the summers and things.
Wow.
Crikey.
I told him at the time, I said, if this gets in the way of my Thor stuff, I'm going to have to bail. And he said, no, I can't. And ultimately, that's what happened.
Yeah.
Because I had to bail on it. But,
that's a lot of work, isn't it, when you're doing the bi-weekly?
I don't know. That is so schedule-oriented.
Total grind.
Working on the Superman books was the same way. That's a gig. That was a tough gig.
Of course, because they had the triangle numbers at that time, didn't they? So you couldn't miss the due date.
Exactly. I mean, you did not have time to get a plot and sit with it for a couple of days and take your time thumbnailing it. You had to produce and get it out there so the next guy could see what you were doing.
Yeah.
So, the things that overlapped would overlap properly.
Yeah.
It was a tough gig, man.
Yeah.
It was,
yeah.
a friend of mine took the image of Superman from one of my first issues where he's in chains because there was this whole thing going on with him being blamed for Krypton's destruction or something like that. He was in front of some interplanetary tribunal, but he was in heavy chains. And somebody took that image for me and put it on a T-shirt with a word balloon that said "Doing time on the Superman line." Believe
Nice
me,
little in joke.
I was flattered to be there. I was honored to have spent time with that character, but it was a tough gig. And anybody who did it,
I can imagine.
Anybody
As a reader,
anybody who did it for any period of time has nothing but my undying respect.
it was never ending as a reader. I remember that. It just didn't stop. It was idea after idea after idea.
Comic. Yeah.
It was constant, wasn't it?
Those guys did an incredible job. The fact that Mike Carlin was able to ride herd on that crew of creatives for as long as he did
it's incredible.
Is truly superhuman.
Yeah.
Because I'm telling you, nobody was able to do it after he was done.
Yeah.
Nobody else was able to recreate that dynamic.
Yeah. And it was, the quality was pretty consistent as well throughout the titles.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
He was incredible.
Yeah.
But that came at a cost. I mean, that came at living that job at 9 o'clock on a Sunday night and riding herd on a bunch of really established creatives who had creative egos and didn't all get along, and
a lot of personalities you got to manage.
Everything you might picture. And the gentleman who got stuck in that position, trying to think that they could keep that mechanism running without Mike, it just didn't happen. I mean, the books changed after that because that same mechanism chewed up two very, very good editors and spit them out.
Wow.
And the books had to evolve because there was just nobody besides Mike Carlin that could make that thing work.
Wow. That's a real insight.
Oh, I'm full of insights, man.
Oh, yeah. Well, I remember last time we chatted, Ron, it was a very similar conversation. We had a great chat on the old
Well, I'm
podcast.
full of insights, and I'm sure Bleeding Cool is going to turn this into some.
Well, I don't know if they watch this, but
they should.
They should, yeah. We don't turn everything into a drama here.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Well, we're coming up on an even 2 hours, so
we are.
How about I let you guys go so you can get on to your
incredible.
I tell you what, Ron, you've missed that trick there. You should have had Ron, Spider-Man, and his amazing. So the next time you do a podcast, Ron, and then all the old school cartoon fans will get the joke.
Yeah.
Well, that comes up every once in a while on when I do StreamYard, and I didn't do that. That was done by somebody that one of the first people I did StreamYard with. Because I would not pick that.
Stuck there ever since.
But I like yours much better. And everybody would get it except Tom DeFalco, because we did an issue of Spider-Girl at one point where I wanted to do a joke where Mary Jane and a whole bunch of the supporting characters were all wearing Spider-Girl costumes, and they were going to run out of the shop to try to confuse the bad guy to give Spider-Girl an opening.
Right.
Okay? And I had Mary Jane in my liner notes. I had Mary Jane saying, "Spider friends, go for it!" As they're all running out into the street to confuse the bad guy. Tom apparently never watched Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. And just had Spider friends, go, go, go. And I'm like, that wasn't the battle cry, Tom. So what can I tell you? He's a genius, but he never watched cartoons.
Well, we'll let him off. We'll let him off for that one.
Yeah, he helped create Transformers and G.I. Joe, but apparently never watched them. So,
Unbelievable. Well, thank you so much again, Ron.
Yeah, thank you, Ron.
It's been an amazing couple of hours. It really has. Thank you so much. Absolute pleasure to talk to you.
It's been my pleasure. It's been great chatting with you. So you guys keep doing what you're doing. And best of luck to you in the future. Okay?
Thanks, Ron. All the best.
Thanks, Ron. Cheers. All the best.
Good night,
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.